Don Paterson was born in Dundee and still lives in Scotland, where he teaches at the University of St Andrews. He's worked as a professional musician and composer, an arts columnist for Scotland on Sunday, and a video games reviewer for The Times. He's also written drama for the radio and stage and has been poetry editor of Picador since 1997. It's as a poet that he's best known, one of very few poets to have won the Ford Prize, both for Best First Collection and Best Collection, and to have won the T.S. Eliot Prize twice. He's also won the Whitbread Poetry Prize and a Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry. Responding to his selected poems, one critic wrote, "From the get-go, Paterson's poetry has been essential reading."
Hi there. I can't see you. That's maybe a good thing. I've got no idea. I'm going to try and do this reading from an iPad, which in my mind was a good idea, but now that I'm doing it, I'd imagined it would look quite kind of hipster and cool and treeless, but now that I'm standing here, it feels kind of wanky and affected. But anyway, I shall persist if I can remember my password. I'm going to populate my 15 minutes with a bunch of sonnets, if that's the right collective noun. I've got no idea. An outbreak, a rash of sonnets. And the good thing about sonnets, as you know, is they're all fairly short. So if you don't like this one, there'll be another one along that you might not like either. But they're brief. So I'll start off with something topical. This poem is called "The Big Listener." It's Tony Blair has made a reappearance recently after the election result, looking increasingly like Nosferatu, as far as I can tell. And this is a poem I wrote for Tony about voting for him in 1997, full of great hope, which seems fabulously naive. It's called "The Big Listener," incidentally, because I think that, if Tony was Stalin, that's what we'd have to call him, because he's a listening kind of guy. The Big Listener. Midnight, Connaught Square, a headlight beam finds Sherry just back from her speaking date. She looks at you, less animal of late. You lose no sleep but wake within a dream, your favourite, that old divided dark, the white square at your neck, your good ear bent towards the long sighs of your penitent. You rinse 1,000 souls before the lark and wake refreshed, if somewhat at a loss as to why they seem so lost for words. They are your dead, who still rose to the birds the day we filled the booths and made the cross before you'd forced them, howling to their knees, to suffer your attentions. Spare us, please. And in an effortless segue, this is about something entirely different. This is a poem about emergence and being here and consciousness and I'm a materialist, I should explain. I do believe in the spiritual, but I think it arises from matter, and I think this has suddenly gotten very heavy, this conversation, I'm sorry. But I think we're basically kind of chemical scum on a rocky planet, and we have this dream, and the dream is that we're here. We're not actually here, we're really just a bunch of chemical scum. But dreaming that we're here is sufficient to the condition of existence. I'm glad I've got this off my chest. But this is a poem about it. It's just called "The Air." What is this dark and silent caravan that being nowhere neither comes nor goes, that being never has no hour or span, of which we can say only that it flows? How was it that this empty data stream, this cache of dead light, could so lose its way it wandered back to feed on its own dream? How did that dream grow to the waking day? What is that sound that fades up from the hiss like a glass some random downdraft had set ringing, now full of its only note, its lonely call, drawing on its song to keep it singing? When will the air stop breathing? Will it all come to nothing if nothing came to this? And this next poem is narrated in the voice of a wave, and it's not a particularly self-aware wave, which isn't unusual amongst the wave community, now that I think of it. But the poem is a kind of allegory, I assume, for a certain lack of self-knowledge. Wave. For months I'd move across the open water like a wheel under its skin, a frictionless and by then almost wholly abstract matter, with nothing in my head beyond the bliss of my own breaking, and how the long foreshore would hear my full confession, and I'd drain into the shale till I was filtered pure. There was no way to tell on that bare plain, but I felt my power run down with the miles, and by the time I saw the scattered sails, the painted front, and children on the pier, I was nothing but a fold in her blue gown, and knew I was already in the clear. I hit the beach and swept away the town. This is a sonnet about a photographer I've been obsessed with for some time, whose work you may know, called Francesca Woodman. Woodman died very young by her own hand in the early 80s. If you don't know her work, I'd highly recommend it. It's sort of about the female body in space, and most of her work is kind of self-portrait. Nude self-portrait in derelict rooms, in strange derelict spaces. But there's another aspect of it, which is really about how the room looks at you. It's almost as if the room has taken the photograph itself. And the room regards us, on this evidence, as a kind of little soft thing that really just comes and goes, a kind of a ghost that's just passing through. And she has the strange ability to capture that aspect of us, or inner ghosthood, if you like. So this is just 7 couplets about Woodman, Francesca Woodman. At the heart there is a hollow sun by which we are constructed and undone. Behind the mirror, a favourite place to hide. I didn't breathe. They looked so long, I died. What's shown when we unveil, disclose, undress is first the promise, then its emptiness. Ghost face, not because I turned my head, but because what looked at me was dead. We don't exist, we only dream we are here. This means we never die, we disappear. We'd met in previous lives, he was convinced. Yeah, I thought, and haven't spoken since. All rooms will hide you if you stand just so. All ghosts know this. That's really all they know. I have no introduction to this next poem, simply because I haven't got a clue what it's about, and if anyone would like to tell me afterwards, I'd be very grateful to them. It's called A Threshold. Where have you gone, my little saving grace, Iona or Iola of the laugh like falling silver? Now nothing's in its place, and all's as light and cold as that blue scarf I lost or left without or I don't own. Everything shamed me. Every card declined. You slid between the stalls and you were gone, though I scoured the field for hours, hoping to find you sat with the silent children of the fair, or some such nonsense, though I always knew you'd taken another hand, the way kids do, not looking up. This place again. It's where I wake up and recall I have no daughter, or fall asleep and dream I have no daughter. In my remaining minutes, I'll try and sort of get funnier, but you should never say that. I'm always irritated when poets declare their intention to be funny, because I think you should be the judge of that. But this is a lighter piece. It was written. It's called "To Dundee City Council." It was written in response to the council's request for a praise poem about my native city of Dundee. I wasn't able to provide one. I was upset with the town at the time and leaving it for what I hope will be the last time. It was the occasion was that Dundee had been shortlisted for the UK City of Culture, which is funny enough in itself if you've been there. Although a few punchlines beaten by Hull, which is what happened in the end. It also makes reference to the fact that Dundee's, in some cosmic misfiling, will have the new Victoria and Albert building. I love the place, really. This was written in high dudgeon. Anyway, to Dundee City Council. Fair play, round here only junkies walk, so it's unfair that I affect my shock at this last straw, that fine baronial stair you found cheaper to fence off than to repair, thus adding 20 minutes to my trip via ring road, bomb site, rape tunnel and skip to the library where poor folks go to die or download porno on the free Wi-Fi. My shameful vanity, I thought you might take time this time to personalise the slight. No, at least I leave here with my tail between my legs again and setting sail for that fine country called the fuck away. Farewell, good luck with the V&A. I don't applaud them. This next poem, I've got too many poems, I'm going to skip a few. This next poem was written after I had an existential crisis last year. The occasion was I was stuck in a lift, which is my worst nightmare. The place was somewhere in Yorkshire in a B&B. The reason I was stuck in the lift, I was only trying to go up one floor, but I was too lazy to take the stairs. And there was a power cut and the lights went off and I was stuck in this lift. So it's a kind of a middle-aged sort of crisis poem. It's called A Power Cut. This is what we've come to, this damn lift, this blackout, this airlock, this voiceless stop, this empty set, this storm cave, this dead drop, this deaf nut, this dumb waiter, this blind drift, this necker cube, this coal shed, this Swiss bank, this iron lung, this hide, this diving bell, this pseudocoma, priest hole, holding cell, this meat locker, this isolation tank, this, since I'm too lazy for the stairs in this airless guest house in the Dales, so went for this jack screw for the old or lame or spent for this 2-second trip between two floors, this way up box to sweat and say my prayers in, this 6-foot night, this theatre of doors, this. The whole thing, I should say, took maybe 5 or 6 seconds tops, but there we go. I'll read a poem. When I was writing this poem, I was thinking about Rilke, especially, and you may know this about Rilke, but he had a thing with dogs, which is he couldn't bear to be in the same room as a dog, not because he didn't like them, but because he identified with their pain too strongly. He felt that their presence amongst humans had patheticated them, and he said, we have raised in them a soul for which there is no heaven. The other funny thing about dogs is that we treat them much better than we do each other, especially at the end. So this is about the end of a dog. It's called Mercies. She might have had months left of her dog years, but to be who? She'd grown light as a nest and spent the whole day under her long ears listening to the bad radio in her breast. On the steel bench, knowing what was taking shape, she tried and tried to stand as if to sign that she was still of use and should escape our selection. So I turned her face to mine, and seeing only love there, which, for all the wolf in her, she knew as well as we did, she lay back down and let the needle enter. And love was surely what her eyes conceded as her stare grew hard, and one bright aerial quit making its report back to the centre. Read one called, it will appear on here as Getting Nowhere. The title has changed to The Roundabout, and Getting Nowhere is a wholly negative, typically pessimistic title for really a rather cheerful poem. I don't know what I was thinking about. But anyway, this is for my kids. Getting Nowhere. That's the one. It's moving still, that wooden roundabout we found at the field's end, sunk in the grass like an ancient buckler from some giant's war. The first day of good weather, our first out after me and your mother. Its thrawn mass was like trying to push a tree over or row a galley sealed in ice. I was all for giving up when we felt it give and go. What had saved the axle all these years? It gave out one great drawn-out yawn and swung away like 100 gates. Our hands still burning, we lay and looked up at a sky so clear there was nothing in the world to prove our turning but our light heads and the wind's lung. I'm going to finish off with a version of a poem I've been obsessed with ever since my friend Dirk Groenbein told me about it a couple of years ago, and I'm dismayed to see that I'm sitting beside my other friend. I have more than two friends, but another friend, Michael Hoffman, because I've read Michael's vastly superior version of this poem only recently. Nonetheless, I will persist and read this thing out. It's a version of a poem by Gottfried Benn called Little Aster. And like a number of Ben's poems, it refers to his time as a military pathologist. So the setting is the mortuary. It's a very strange poem indeed. Little Aster. We hauled the drayman onto the slab. He drowned in the canal. Some wag had set a small blue flower between his teeth. When I went below his skin with my long knife and reached up along through the chest to cut out the tongue and a soft palate, I must have touched the stem and dislodged the thing. It had slipped from his mouth and into the brain that sat beside him in a steel bowl. I packed the flower with the wood shavings back into his empty chest and stitched them up again. Drink your fill of that great vase. Sleep well, my little Aster. Thanks.